David, thanks for taking some time out this morning to talk about the news that came out late on Wednesday afternoon about the fact that 100,000 kids across the province of Ontario in 7 different school boards will be heading back to school come Monday. Let's first talk about, David, about the decision that came about and how it came about, because researching this morning, reading articles, reading comments from parents, you're in that predicament where many families are saying that it's good, we need to get these kids back to school, but you're also hearing the flip side of this is how can this government send these kids back to school when we're supposed to be in lockdown orders, stay-at-home orders, and only go out for certain reasons. Talk about the decision why these kids are going back to school on Monday.
Well, I think, thanks, Mark. I think these are obviously incredibly difficult decisions, and it's not quite black or white. There is always nuance. And specifically here, I mean, we have a moral imperative to really keep our kids learning, to keep the social dynamic, the importance of that in-person learning piece, of socializing with your friends, of getting that in-class instruction. We know that despite the hundreds of millions of dollars investments into remote learning, into equipping students to succeed online, there are still online challenges. Parents, let's be real. I mean, many are working in one form of essential business or another. Many are working from home and still working. And, you've got kids at the table, and the realities of Zoom calls now where you've got 3 to 4 to 5 in a family online. This is very challenging, but at its core, we have to ensure a safe learning environment. And when we saw that massive spike over Christmas, the importance was to wait a few weeks until the asymptomatic testing among students had stabilized, and we've made additional investments, obviously, into back to school, not only in PPE, safe learning environment for cleaning, additional teachers, etc., but also into those mental health supports, because we know it's challenging for everyone. So we've got to get kids in the classroom. It's safe to do so. And I think people can distinguish between the severity of COVID and the measures we're taking. But I think right up on our priority list is getting kids in school. And you have to obviously balance a litany of challenges, but the imperative of getting kids in school is absolute. It's first and foremost. And as we've seen globally around the world, governments are forced into making very difficult decisions, yet keeping schools open to keep that continuity of education.
David, with the going back to school on Monday, has your government put any new regulations or restrictions in or safety measures in that parents may not have seen when the kids left school late in December?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think asymptomatic testing is a really, really big piece. And I know we were one of the first jurisdictions to roll out asymptomatic testing, which means we're just taking samples of students, testing them proactively, to see. And for those who say, yeah, if my child's asymptomatic and they don't even have the sniffles, what does that matter? Well, we know that if they take that home around the dinner table, you have a multi-generational family, and next thing you know, those seniors are in the ICU or in hospital, and we've seen what lung capacity of someone with COVID-19 versus a healthy person, and the challenges that can have on people. I think of my own parents who are absolutely healthy, and they're nowhere near the sort of long-term care stage of their life. And it matters to me, and it matters to, I know, a litany of constituents, that we preserve the integrity of our system and protect these people. So that asymptomatic piece, back to your question, is key. And we've made additional investments into protecting schools with additional PPE, with additional cleaning supplies. We know that the additional 10 million from phase 2 of federal funding, we've additionally put that into mental health supports. So we've done a number of things, but I think the 475 additional staff, support staff that we've brought online for mental health now complements the additional 625 public health nurses healthcare experts that we've brought in. Again, when you have a public health nurse working embedded in the board, understanding the realities of how a virus spreads, that supports teachers so that they can focus on learning. So these are just some of the many investments we've made to ensure safe back to school.
Correct me if I'm wrong, David. Did I read this morning that kids grades 1 to 3 will now have to wear masks in class, inside and out? Is that correct? Did I see that this morning?
That's correct. Yeah, there is masking, and we know that's one of a suite of measures, public health measures that can help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Having said that, there are, for those with respiratory and healthcare conditions, they're not required to wear a mask.
Will all the schools in your riding, Northumberland, Peterborough, South, David, be open come Monday? Because obviously there are certain areas where school boards and health units span across different areas. Will all the schools in your riding be open, Northumberland, Peterborough, South?
No, because of the Durham region and the portion of the riding in Newcastle and Orono. And I know for many, I mean, here's the catch at 22, Mark. I mean, you find ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic many months ago, and we looked at doing things at a board level. And the conversations I had with educators, the conversations I had with parents, was one saying, why aren't you following, public health unit boundaries? Why my public health unit has a chief public health officer that's using Section 22, using additional measures to help curb the spread, and using that authority under the Healthcare Act to be able to curb the spread of COVID-19. So we've subsequently looked, and working with the chief medical officer of health, working with our public health units, the change here was to look at this around public health units. And so I know it's difficult, again, for someone at the outer edges of the Durham public health region. They might find more in common with Northumberland and with Port Hope, Coburg, with the rural elements of Northumberland County. Usually it's the same person that will then complain and say, why am I in a riding with Northumberland, Peterborough South? So sometimes you just can't win, but ultimately we're working on a public health unit basis. They're doing contact tracing. They're experts in infectious disease and spread, and they're working now as we pivot to the vaccine rollout. They're playing an integral role in that vaccine rollout, which towards the end of the school year and into the summer will be getting vaccines in arms of everyday Ontarians. So this is, I know, difficult for those in Newcastle and Orono, but for the public health units of Halbert and Kawartha Pine Ridge and Peterborough, those students are back in class.
Final question, David, for those families that still don't feel safe, can they still have their child enrolled in the online part in learning from home if they don't feel the need to send their child to school on Monday?
Yes, they absolutely can. Again, though, I would say, if you look to the measures that we've implemented, have ensured, that well over 95% of students never contracted COVID at all in the fall semester. So, I mean, we're taking extra precautions when it comes to not only the safety and well-being of our students, but again, of that family structure and of the prevention, in spread that children can lead, or that can lead to within one's family structure. So we've taken, again, exhaustive measures to protect to ensure, and I should say, ensure a safe learning environment, protect the health and well-being of our next generation. And I'm hopeful that many will get their kids back in school, but there is always that, depending on what your parents are doing, depending on the wishes of one's family, there is that ability to continue learning online with the supports that we've put in place for online learning.